name is Vince Steiner with Bohannon, Houston. I'm going to tell you about the Alameda Storm Drain Outfall Water Quality Improvements Feasibility Study. This study was commissioned by Bernalillo County Natural Resource Services and was started and completed in 2020 during the age of COVID. The existing issue with the Alameda Boulevard storm drain outfall is that it discharges almost directly to the Rio Grande Bosque, and there's limited treatment of the stormwater flows before discharging to the Rio Grande. The goal of this study was to identify opportunities to improve the water quality downstream of the pump station at the outfall, and to use Green Stormwater Infrastructure, or GSI, to provide those water quality improvements. Part of the study was to evaluate the feasibility of various green stormwater infrastructure practices, as well as provide recommendations to the county for future implementation. The opportunities that were identified as part of the study are essentially that there's land available at the outfall and in close proximity for implementation of a treatment train utilizing a combination of infiltration or stormwater harvesting basins, bioswales, and a sedimentation, more engineered system as part of the overall treatment train approach. The outcome of the study were the three concepts you're seeing on the screen. One for a treatment train within the Rio Grande Bosque, another for a treatment train on Albuquerque open space, which is a Bernalillo County maintained and managed open space. And then a third with a more confined or smaller footprint also in the Bosque. The study outcome was a report that will allow Bernalillo County to seek funding and to plan for these improvements and construction in future years.
The 4th Street Master Plan was created to be a blueprint for the revitalization of this remnant of the much celebrated Route 66 into a center of Los Ranchos activity, with the lofty goal of providing an economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable Main Street. The plan envisions a street that is well integrated into its surroundings while providing a foil for commerce and civic activity, and at the same time sustaining its landscape through a water-sensitive approach to design and construction, and an example of how doing the right thing can coalesce our precious water resources with aesthetics and land use benefits. It is a street and a pedestrian corridor. It is also a water sponge and a water safety conveyance that will age gracefully into its North Valley home in such a way that it is greener and more water conservative than traditional streets. Before this project was built, the street was wide with 4 lanes of traffic, no lighting, no sidewalks or any form of pedestrianism, no stormwater treatment of any kind. Landscaping was pretty much non-existent, and street flooding caused many users to run for the high ground. There were also bars on many of the windows of buildings and vacant properties throughout the corridor. Parcel and building owners were very hesitant to make any improvements on the street until there was some change to it. The 4th Street revitalization envisions walkable and safe spaces for pedestrians, beautiful permeable pavements in both walkways and street sections, places to sit and enjoy a cup of coffee or a meal, edible landscaping, shade, on-street parking as well as a new village parking lot, which is also permeable, lighting, green infrastructure, slower traffic and bus stops for the many transit users along the street, and other amenities. The landscape, modeled after the village's agrarian roots, uses grasses and herbs as metaphors for fields and gardens, and fruit trees as symbols of the orchards that are interspersed throughout Los Ranchos. The street also imagines events which should take place from time to time and linkages to points to the south, like the forthcoming village center for Los Ranchos. In the next few slides, we will illustrate some of the features of this remarkable new street. The permeable street gutters, parking spaces, and other parts of the street section of the streetscape are reimagined as water collection devices, street basins if you will, as well as tasteful and well-designed additions to the stormwater system. Perhaps as important, they are also locally manufactured. When it rains, these areas collect water from impermeable street sections and drain it through these cobblestone street basins, and then let stormwater gently drain to subsurface collection systems through the permeable grout at the cobblestones. We should also note that the grout is designed in 2 lifts to allow drainage, but also to capture dirt and dust through a finer surface lens that will then be collected by the Village of Los Ranchos maintenance staff. The subsurface structures below the cobblestone basins then collect stormwater through filter fabric protected gravel, and finally into perforated pipe passive irrigation systems that then deposit the stormwater in planting beds through subsurface wicks, and finally to subsurface reservoirs that drain surplus water into valley groundwater, our aquifer, to create a sustainable approach for both passive irrigation and groundwater injection. There are 10 collection systems, 5 on each side of the street, organized throughout the corridor. Each subsurface reservoir has maintenance manholes to allow the village access for cleaning. There is also a smaller subsurface drainage system in the promenade, which was designed similarly to collect water and deposit through wicks into planting beds with fruit trees, herbs, and other edible plants. These planters are also demonstrations of the larger agricultural farms throughout the valley. The 4th Street Revitalization Project not only changed the face of this historic remnant of a past highway system, it also shows a way forward to a more sustainable future. The project improves the pedestrian experience and at the same time uses permeable pavement to return storm flows to where they are needed. It provides parking in a logical progression of spaces down the street, and it also cures the street's prior stormwater problems as it feeds landscaping and the aquifer beneath the valley floor. This project is not only a street, it is a living room for the village and a great room for others to visit. The thing that makes this part of 4th Street special is that it is not just about LID. It is not only about improved safety or lighting or landscaping. It provides Los Ranchos with multiple layers of positive change that sets the village up for its future as one of the special places in the Albuquerque metropolitan area.
This site plan shows parking lot runoff draining into a stormwater harvesting basin. Runoff that does not infiltrate in the basin flows into an overdrain. In large storms, if the basin fills to capacity, runoff will also flow over a low point in the sidewalk and into a detention pond that doubles as plaza space. A storm drain in the detention pond connects to the gray infrastructure system. Large aggregate was used in the basin to deter foot traffic. A large layer of organic mulch beneath the aggregate inhibits weed growth while also supporting healthy soil and infiltration. Construction was completed in fall of 2019, so this photo shows plants with about 1 year of growth. A strip of basalt aggregate forms a sediment trap along the edge of the parking lot. Eventually, the basalt will become stained by pollutants in parking lot runoff, but the dark color of the aggregate won't show the staining like lighter color aggregates do. The sediment trap also collects trash like cigarette butts. During a very large storm event, overflow from the basin would cross the concrete where you see the person with the yellow safety vest. The portion of the plaza behind the person with the safety vest functions as a detention pond. However, if water does flow into this portion of the plaza, it will have been cleaned by flowing through the stormwater harvesting basin. This maintains the cleanliness of the detention pond plaza area. This pre-COVID photo of a craft fair at the plaza highlights the visibility and educational potential of the stormwater harvesting basin. The beehive overdrain, seen in the foreground, connects to the storm drain system. Runoff that enters the overdrain has been filtered by plants and mulch so that the water being discharged to the river contains fewer pollutants. A symmetrical planting design ties into the symmetrical plaza design and would make it easier to identify any unintentional plants which may be weeds. The plants selected for this basin tolerate inundation and provide a buffer between the parking lot and plaza. Large trees were considered, but not ultimately included due to the utility lines running under the basin. Here you see the detention basin portion of the plaza during a smaller event in fall 2020. This drone footage shows the plaza during a fall market, which was a reduced size event per COVID guidelines in fall 2020. The central circular area you see in the plaza was inspired by a railroad turntable located in a different area of the rail yards. The plaza was designed to accommodate gatherings of many sizes and types. We hope that soon these events will be allowed to safely happen once again, and that you will be able to attend a gathering at the plaza at the rail yards.
This site plan shows parking lot and roof runoff being directed to tree trenches and stormwater harvesting basins that are connected to one another by a series of piped drains to create a treatment drain. Overflow from these features is directed to a traditional detention basin in the northwest corner of the site before entering the storm drain system. The combination of gray and green infrastructure allowed for flexibility to meet grading limitations. The two main stormwater harvesting basins were seeded with native grasses and wildflowers and planted with oak and desert willow trees. Soil sponges in the basins help to promote infiltration. This basin is closest to the building and is the smaller of the two basins. The revegetation seeding received irrigation for a 2-year establishment period, but now survives on precipitation alone. C&M maintenance staff did thorough hand weeding for 2 years, which allowed the grasses to become dominant. The trees and shrubs in and around the basin have permanent irrigation. This project was certified LEED Gold, and on-site stormwater management was only one of the sustainability goals that were met. Last summer, cattails were found to be growing in one of the basins, adding to the habitat benefit provided by this landscape. Here you see the second stormwater harvesting basin after a recent storm. The shade and vegetation in the basins creates a cooling, park-like landscape. Once the shade trees grow to maturity, the heat mitigation impact of this landscape will be even greater. The second stormwater harvesting basin receives overflow from the first basin, as well as runoff from the two parking lot areas. As you can see in this photo, runoff from one of the parking lots enters the basin through a sloped drain. Overflow enters the outlet control structure in the foreground, which is piped to a detention basin in the northwest corner of the site. The C&M Sustainability Program added interpretive signage to the project to increase the educational impact of the landscape. This swale on the north side of the building collects roof runoff and provides supplemental irrigation for shade trees. Overflow from the swale enters the storm drain system. Flush curbs in the parking lot to the south of the building allow runoff to flow into 2 tree trenches, one of which is seen in this photo. The trenches were sited perpendicular to the direction of runoff for maximum stormwater capture and filtration. When the trees reach maturity, they will shade the asphalt and mitigate heat. Runoff that does not infiltrate into the tree trenches flows into this linear basin at the lowest edge of the parking lot. The overflow drain that you see in this photo is piped to the detention basin in the northwest corner of the site. This drone footage allows you to get a better sense of the scale of the features as well as the vegetated area. You may also notice the triangular detention pond at the northwest corner of the site. The footprint of the aesthetically unappealing detention pond was reduced because of the temporary storage capacity of the GSI features. Collaboration between the architect, engineer, and landscape architect allowed integration of water harvesting features throughout the site in order to capture and filter stormwater. The result is a beautiful landscape that also functions to filter pollutants, decrease potable water use, mitigate heat, and provide habitat.
The Tijeras Creek Remediation Project serves as a publicly accessible model demonstration of an integrated stormwater treatment train. The site itself is constructed on less than 3/4 of an acre and provides the watershed services for over 20 acres of impervious surface. The project consists of surge basins, bioswales, all networked together and in a sinuous manner with progressively larger basins one after another to maximize the settling out of solids in the stormwater, as well as allowing for a more focused biological response to help mitigate both the pollution and to increase permeability of the soils. The construction was done mostly by volunteers and by the project manager and staff. Maintenance is primarily the removal of trash, monitoring growth of vegetation on spillways to control the elevational height, and primarily removal of invasive species. This site was characterized by Siberian elm infestation, which you can see the magnitude of. We have soil sponges installed throughout the low water areas. Those really contribute to improved permeability as well as increasing field capacity, the water holding capacity of the soils, and the infiltration rates and exfiltration rates have increased hugely through the last 6 or 7 years while this has been built. Through the hands of many volunteers, the Rocky Mountain Youth Corps, UNM, Nature Conservancy, Bernalillo County Master Naturalists, and many others have contributed while going through an educational opportunity. People are able to see that this project is actually achievable. You can have a beautiful stormwater flow instead of gray infrastructure. We're delivering much cleaner water to the creek, as you can see in some of the footage. The aerial view is beginning in the western section of the Bernalillo County land. It shows the magnitude of the Siberian elm infestation, and it also, if you can see it, indicates how severely incised the creek is. And the creek has been redirected due to the incising, and delivery of sediments from upstream has made that creek threaten private property. This is an ongoing project, and elm removal and other non-native invasive species are being systematically controlled and eliminated where possible throughout the project site. Our hopes are to connect the creek to the most recent floodplain, where it used to flow as recently as 1991. We'll enhance those areas that we can reconnect it to the floodplain and further enhance the biological response and the subsurface flows that are associated with floodplain performance.
As you see in this site plan, roof runoff is directed to a swale that wraps 3 sides of the building. Any runoff that does not infiltrate overflows at the northeast corner of the site. A series of small basins are incorporated along the swale to increase infiltration. This was the first significant water harvesting landscape constructed on the UNM campus. This project was certified LEED Platinum. At the time construction was completed in 2010, this was the first LEED Platinum certified project in New Mexico. In this photo, you see shade trees that receive supplemental irrigation from roof runoff collected in swales and basins adjacent to the trees. One of these trees shades the west side of the building. A canyon-like condition is created between the south side of the College of Education and the north side of Travelstead Hall. The swale collects roof runoff from both buildings. The runoff from Travelstead Hall falls from canales into raised metal collector basins that overflow into the swale. Native and low water use plants in the landscape north of the building create a habitat pocket. Plants lining the swale receive supplemental irrigation from roof runoff. In very large storm events, any water that does not infiltrate in the swale and basins overflows to the university's gray infrastructure drainage system, which in this case is the concrete walkway you see in the photo. In the background, you can see that the oak tree nearest to the swale is also the largest. Roof drains along the north side of the building discharge to splash pads that release runoff into the swale and basins. This project incorporated organic mulch in the landscape adjacent to the swale. At the time of design, organic mulches were not used in campus landscapes. In the years since this landscape was installed, organic mulches have become commonly used on campus, and UNM now generates organic mulches for use on campus landscapes. Here you see a swale along the north side of the building with adjacent native and low water use plants. This metal basin mounted on a concrete block catches runoff from a roof downspout above the basin. Water flows from the metal basin into the swale that wraps the building. This video shows the roof spout above the metal basin and the path that runoff takes as it flows from the basin into the swale and around the building. We hope you enjoyed this virtual tour of the UNM College of Education and encourage you to go visit the project in person.
Detention basins offer a highly efficient means of managing stormwater during infrequent but intense storm events, holding the excess water only until it can safely be returned to the drainage infrastructure network. However, these basins require significant area, are typically closed off to the public, and don't offer many benefits to the community or ecosystem. But what if they could? And what would that look like? Take for instance the 2.7-acre detention basin at the northwest corner of Lomas and Broadway in downtown Albuquerque. Right now, it's basically a big hole in the ground at a very prominent intersection. As Albuquerque only sees an average of 50 days of rain per year, this basin's actually only in service for 10% of the time. But what about the other 90% of the year when the space is not in service? And what about all that water? Could we take advantage of the 15 acre-feet that inundates the basin during each event and use it to create something more? The Water Cathedral is a response to this challenge and may serve as a prototype for detention basins around the world, especially in denser urban areas where extra space isn't always available. The purpose of this project was to reimagine what a traditional stormwater detention basin could be and to create a place of refuge for urban inhabitants, both human and non-human alike. It also seeks to showcase critical water infrastructure and hydrology processes by celebrating the ephemeral storm events that activate the basin, fostering opportunities for people to interact with what is typically hidden away or not easily understood. The overall design framework is driven by the site hydrology and uses both passive and active stormwater management techniques. In addition to maintaining the original function of the basin, several other strategies are utilized. The first, stormwater from the surrounding roadways at the top of the basin is conveyed and infiltrated through a continuous swale which supports a vegetated buffer around the site. The overflow is then carried into the larger basin. Secondly, the bottom of the primary basin is comprised of a series of smaller connected microbasins that allow for increased infiltration time after the flooded basin has emptied. The third is a system of vertical cisterns located at the center of each microbasin, designed to capture and store a large percentage of the stormwater that inundates the basin during each event, storing water vertically rather than horizontally. The planting palette and landscape typologies are based on inundation tolerance and the basin's frequency and intensity of inundation. For example, less tolerant species are placed at higher elevations where the basin water level does not usually reach. More hydrophilic species are cultivated in the microbasins at the lower elevations, where inundation will be more frequent. The primary active water storage features are the habitat cisterns, designed to function like trees, soaking up water when activated by flooding and slowly releasing it to support their foliage, while serving as a roost for avian and bat species. Collectively, they store 576,000 gallons or 1.75 acre-feet when full, adding almost 12% to the basin's normal capacity. From just one large event, the habitat cisterns can provide enough water to be used throughout the year to irrigate and sustain the surrounding habitat areas with zero reliance on potable water. In looking at the elevations of the project, we can now see in more detail how the various water management strategies are interconnected and apply the principles of GSI and LID. Additionally, elements such as the observation deck, boardwalk, and the striking forms of the habitat cisterns demonstrate how this new typology can create interest to provide an effective means of interacting with water infrastructure and urban wildlife. Resembling the ruins of a Gothic cathedral, the column-shaped habitat cisterns create an appealing aesthetic and sense of enclosure, offering an experience of promenade along a central axis to the drainage outlet of the basin as a focal point and art piece, or altar, symbolic of the preciousness of water in the desert. With a raised boardwalk surrounding the drainage structure, the basin is also accessible even when the residual stormwater has not completely infiltrated. In closing, infrastructure doesn't have to be boring and sterile. It can be much more, and the Water Cathedral shows us proof of that. When it's dry, let's make it a usable space. When it's flooded, let's celebrate the valuable function it plays in keeping us safe while at the same time reusing and returning every possible drop to the surrounding soils, not someplace far downstream. So the next time you pass this site, or one like it, please ask yourself, or perhaps the flood control engineer sitting next to you, what more could it be, and what can we do to help?
Okay, hi, this is Amy Bell with Groundwork Studio. I'm excited to share with you some information about a project that was part of the International District Urban Agriculture Plan for Bernalillo County, the Presbyterian Health Resource Center Community Garden. This project was one of 9 project sites that were developed as part of the plan. Some projects were just designed, but this one was actually built in order to understand the opportunities and challenges for urban agriculture in the International District. As you can see in the rendering, the garden was constructed in what used to be a bank drive-through, so provided a really great opportunity to demonstrate soil remediation and water harvesting, and the relationship those practices have with each other in support of growing edible plants in an urban environment. All of the water from the roof of the resource center and the parking lot is directed to the pollinator garden area along the western edge of the site and the water catchment basin at the south. The land within the vegetable garden area is contoured to keep the water that falls there in the garden. Here we see some hardworking food justice interns turning compost at one of the other project sites. A big part of the plan's success was connecting multiple urban agriculture efforts so different groups could learn from and help each other out. The Presbyterian Garden was an ideal site to demonstrate the use of soil sponges in decompacting and improving the health of the soil, which was previously under the asphalt driveway. These were designed in partnership with Adaptive Terrain Systems and installed in the summer of 2019, which we see here by Yellowstone Landscape. We immediately saw the benefit of installing this in a public place. Once people saw how simple the sponge installation is, they said, well, I can do that at home. I can do that in the parking lot. A temporary irrigation system was also installed to irrigate the sponges and provide that much needed activation of microbes to initiate the remediation process. Then in 2020, the Resource Center planted a cover crop of sunflowers. The raised beds you see there were designed and built by ACE Leadership High School students. And here we see the water catchment basin in action after a summer storm. One of the challenges for this project was addressing the perception that removing pavement and capturing parking lot runoff would actually create additional drainage problems by reducing the amount of discharge to the street. These are some recent pictures of the garden, which during these winter months isn't glamorous, but you can already see the change in color and amount of organic matter in the soil. Cost of water was the top barrier identified, with broken irrigation system not far behind for urban gardeners, making the integration of passive water harvesting and urban agriculture projects critical for garden sustainability. So this project was really key in helping our team make recommendations for how Bernalillo County can support the inclusion of water harvesting in community urban agriculture. And just a quick plug for the Presbyterian Health Resource Center, if folks aren't familiar with it, it provides access to resources like teaching kitchens, community meeting and activity space, and a food pharmacy, which is a referral-based food pantry that provides healthy food to those who are food insecure. The location is also a stop for the Healthy Here program's mobile farmers market.
Hello, my name is Aaron Kaufman. I am the founder of Southwest Urban Hydrology, a business that focuses on green infrastructure and remediating the impacts of urban growth on watershed health. I also happen to be a graduate of Santa Fe High School. The Santa Fe High School campus is roughly 80 acres and comprises numerous impervious surfaces, including staff, student, and activities parking lots, The parking lots discharge large volumes of stormwater, lack habitat value, and contribute to urban heat island effect. Severe erosion in the channel led the city of Santa Fe to spend over $1 million to stabilize several stretches of the arroyo, including a section near the Santa Fe High School campus. In July 2018, a high-intensity 3-inch storm event caused widespread damage in Santa Fe, including parts of a boulder grade control structure in the Arroyo Chamisos. While this singular event was not the catalyst for changing the parking lots at Santa Fe High School, there was a growing recognition among members of the facilities department that stormwater harvesting principles could reduce erosion and contribute to irrigation for improving tree cover. In 2019, a total of 24 parking spaces were retrofitted across 4 terraces in the student parking lot. Each rain garden was intended to capture runoff from about 13 adjacent parking spaces, or roughly 3,500 square feet. 4 additional rain gardens, as well as 1 larger basin, were included as part of the new activities parking lot. On average, the basins are intended to help capture about a 1/3 inch storm from all parking surfaces. Parking spaces in the student lot were given a new curb and gutter border. Approximately 20 inches of underlying soil and base course was excavated and removed from each parking space. Limestone boulders were hand-selected to be used as decorative dry stacked borders as part of the sediment traps. Approximately 2 cubic yards of compost was added to improve soil nutrients in each rain garden. Some of the compost was purchased from a local business that utilized food scraps from Santa Fe Public Schools. A small excavator was used to loosen soils 2 to 3 feet in depth for better infiltration and easy root expansion. Each basin received a 2-inch caliper tree. Species were selected to be drought tolerant and capable of withstanding temporary inundation during storm events. A cobble mulch was hand-placed in the basins to prolong soil moisture between storm events and prevent erosion during high-intensity storms. One-gallon bunch grasses were used in sediment traps to help remediate stormwater pollutants. A variety of 5-gallon shrubs were selected to improve pollinator habitat and provide forage for birds or other wildlife. Most of the rain gardens were completed in the fall of 2019. This overhead image shows 24 parking spaces retrofitted in the student parking lot. As trees mature, an even distribution of shade should be cast across large sections of the parking lot. In addition to remediating stormwater pollutants, the tall bunch grasses in the sediment traps are intended to divert pedestrians away from the deepest parts of the basin. During the winter, the sediment trap grasses provide great color while other plants are dormant. Stormwater from about 3,500 square feet is directed along the original curb and gutter where an inlet and outlet exist. A small cement baffle in the gutter directs water into the rain garden sediment traps. After a basin fills, excess stormwater will flow to the next rain garden or to a storm drain. Standing water in the rain gardens during large storm events will reach about 6 inches in depth before stormwater overflows. The base of trees were planted 1 or 2 inches below the elevation of the gutters to ensure that they would not be inundated for long periods of time. Most rain gardens drain in less than 24 hours. 2020 was exceptionally dry. However, soils in the rain gardens were moist and probably could have supported established vegetation without supplemental irrigation. 100% of plants were alive as vegetation entered dormancy in the fall of 2020. Trees did not exhibit much growth during the first year. However, most of the grasses and shrubs grew vigorously and provided flowers for pollinators. While the trees are still young, the underlying surfaces appear to be maintaining slightly cooler temperatures, which bodes well for future remediation of urban heat island effect caused by the parking area. The final basin completed as part of the rain garden project at Santa Fe High School was a 96-foot long, 6-foot wide rain garden on the south end of the activities parking lot. The basin was excavated and trees were planted during the first week of November 2020. Student volunteers visited the site a week later and planted the remaining vegetation before mulching the area. The basin has an open volume that exceeds 2,000 gallons, which should support 3 trees, 10 flowering and fruiting shrubs, and numerous bunch grasses. In addition to the vegetation, Southwest Urban Hydrology partnered with Reese Baker of the Raincatcher to inoculate 5-foot-long Siberian elm logs with 2 types of oyster mushrooms. The hope is that these fungi could serve as another way of remediating stormwater pollutants while also utilizing wood from areas where elms have become invasive. This project would not have been possible without the fantastic partners listed below.